Hello and welcome to Channel Squared, where we connect with you, the divine, and channel here with you live. My name is Jody Lynn Craven, founder of Abundance Consciousness.
And I'm Heather Marie, founder of Soulgate. And today we're talking about abundance, manifestation, and what's blocking you from receiving. Jody, this is totally your wheelhouse. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today. Where do we begin?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, maybe we should start with the subtleties or differences between abundance and manifestation.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because everybody talks about them as one and the same. And the thing is that manifestation, typically the teachers that you see are talking about manifesting money. And when you ask people, what is like, if you're to completely clear your mind, Heather, and I was to ask you this question, I want you to, tell me the first thing that pops up. What does abundance mean to you?
Well, I guess money.
Right? Ish. Yes. Abundance is overflow. Abundance is simply the vibration of overflow, more of whatever it is that you want. And I think this is the biggest thing that I want to hammer home today is that abundance is more than a number. And a lot of people focus strictly on the number. I need more money. I want more money. And you begin to ask the question of why? Well, I want more money so I can have more options. Why do you want that? I want more money so that I, have more options so that I can have more joy or adventure in my life. It always goes towards this feeling. I want more joy and bliss and peace and whatever it is in your life. So that's the thing that you're actually desiring. And money, yes, is one way perhaps to that. I'm not saying that it's not absolutely true that you can't achieve some of those things with money. I am saying that it's not absolutely true that it will. Because there's a lot of examples of people who are very rich, who don't feel secure, who are very unsafe, really, because they're mobbed all the time by paparazzi or whatever it is. They don't feel peace. They don't feel happy. It's not an absolute that when you have money, you will be happy. But that's what our society has been taught, is that once you have money, you will be happy. And then a lot of people, climb that ladder, get to the top of the building and realize they've climbed the wrong ladder. It didn't get them what they thought they were going to. So I think that's kind of where we start with abundance.
Well, it's interesting as you were talking about that, it kind of popped into my mind when you were like, well, but money is only one way to get to the things that you're wanting to experience. And so I think that that's really like profound, that why do you desire the money? And the money isn't even actually what you desire. Like,
No.
Nobody really desires to have a gazillion dollars in their bank account. They desire what the result is of having a gazillion dollars in their bank account, right?
And it's the perception of what a gazillion dollars in your bank account will mean for you.
True. Very true. And it's, it's really interesting because I definitely am someone who runs into this sort of financial money rat race sort of thinking. I'll be thinking about, I really want to do this with travel, and I really want to go here, and I really want to have this experience. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to need this much money to do it, and so then I'm like, okay, I need to hit this target so that I can, get to this place. But the fact is that who's to say that I'll have to have any money to do that? So one of the things that is kind of on my dream board bucket list is to have a yacht vacation with my family. I have experiences that I would love to, have my parents be a part of, and, my children, when they come, be a part of. And I think it'd be really fun to have a cool, grandparents, parents, kids vacation, on a yacht, in Greece or some beautiful place like that, right? And so, I think about, gosh, what is that going to cost? every time I think about it, I think about what it's going to cost. But what if I know somebody and I have a friendship with somebody and they're like, you can use my yacht. It happens to be parked in Greece this week, we just fly over, So yeah, it's really that like kind of like popped into my mind when you said that. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many ways. Okay. So let's unpack this.
Yes.
What?
What? Well, and I want to make a distinction in the language that you used or in the scenario that you just gave, because a lot of people won't go as far as you have. So it really shows how far you've come, Heather, with your abundance consciousness mindset. How you see the world has changed. So a lot of people in that scenario would be like, I want to go and do this and I want to go and do that, and this is on my bucket list and I can't because I don't have the money. And then they sit in this feeling of lack, scarcity, frustration, and the word that I'm looking for is like you're all bundled up. There's nothing you can do. Like there's no options. You're optionless. And so you're going without. So now in that conversation in your life, that's what you're bringing to the table in terms of your energy, is that lack. I'm going without. I can't have the things that I want. And this is an unconscious program that is running in the background. So kudos to you for saying, okay, well, I could do this and I could do that. You're already starting to think in terms of possibility on how you could achieve that. And then I think just at the beginning of this conversation, you're beginning to break even that box that you put yourself in and thought, okay, well, maybe I don't even need, X amount of money. Maybe there's another way that this could happen. Like perhaps you run a retreat, and for the first week, the retreat pays for the 2 weeks of the cruise that you want to go on with your family. So the family comes for the second week, or, there's billions of possibilities that exist. Billions. Why limit yourself to just one way that you can achieve this? And the second part of this is that focus, what you're focused on, what your frequency is focused on. And most people will get stuck in that lack piece. I'll never have that. I can't do that. I'm too late in life to be able to ever build a business that makes that much money, to turn my business around so that it makes that much money. I've never seen that much money in my life, or you can't conceptualize it. So they keep putting themselves back into this lack state over and over and over again. And then it creates the results of not having that, having less than that even.
I think the thing that's so cool is how you are able to like look at all of the different possibilities. I mean, I've been a client of yours for many years. And I mean, we're like besties, but like, from a professional and personal space, you've also been my coach and my educator and helping me with my lack mindset. And boy, when we first met, could probably really hear it. You're probably like, oh my God, this girl, because, and I think, part of it's a product of upbringing, how your family maybe looked at, I'm going to use the term like abundance and wealth and money, even, what their mindset was, if it was scarcity mindset. And, our parents were products of their parents, and a lot of, like my parents, my grandparents, they, experienced, like the depression or the aftermath of the depression. So, for them, it was very, things were always tight. There was never enough. And that was kind of the mindset. And I think that some of this we're going to see shifting anyways because of what's happening astrologically. We're going through a big transit right now, specifically, that is going to, I think, free a lot of people from those Piscean constructs.
Yeah.
So
I think that there's a lot of inherited stuff there, myself included, just because I have this gift of being able to see it, Does not mean I'm perfect at it, for one, because it's hardest to, coach yourself. And number two, it doesn't mean that it was always this way. Speaking of grandparents, both of my grandparents, both sides, they immigrated to Canada. And I remember my dad telling me the story of, his, I guess it would be my great grandparents, when they came over, like they landed in the east side of the country. I can't remember where it was. They didn't speak a lick of English. They knew that they had to get on some sort of train, but they didn't know what the person was saying while the train was like calling all aboard. Like that's the only thing that they knew was all aboard. That's it. So they didn't know how long they would have for food or anything. And when they came to this country, they were told that it's the promised land, that everything that you need is here. And then what they were put on trains, like cattle cars, from one side of the country and brought to the west side of the country and settled in Alberta. But if it wasn't for some of the communities that were already here, they would have starved to death. They didn't have a stove. There was nothing here. They started from absolutely nothing. And my dad tells me stories even of like going to the river and getting a block of ice. Things were hard. And for me, I always thought growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. We weren't poor, but my parents didn't care about flashy things. What a teenager cares about. Jeans, you've got some, good enough. Coat, you've got one, good enough. Like there was no brand name conversation. Like I got a job when I was 15 or 14 so I could make money, so I could buy the nice jeans and stop being made fun of in high school. So I was completely driven and had total laser focus on just making more money, because I had this rooted belief that when I have more money, then I will be happy. And also something to distinguish about that, like the frequency that holds of like, I'm never going to be happy. I'm always going to be, miserable, if you will, or lacking something unless I have more money. This was the perception that I went into my life with. And it was only by trying to do that, trying to kill myself, essentially, in doing that. Like I was experiencing adrenal fatigue. I was depressed. I wasn't spending any time with my family. I was working 6-7 days a week. I would work 12, 15 hours a day. Like I would be the first one in the office and I would be the last to leave. Like I would get home most nights at 11:30, 11 o'clock at night, have a half an hour to myself, and then be back at it in the morning. I was running myself ragged. And I kept getting these callings over and over and over again, that if I continued on this pace, that I would die, that I would end up in the hospital. And I kept ignoring them because I thought this is the way it had to be successful. And then everything began to turn. I started to understand the power that our brain has and the programs that are running. And I started to question those things more and more. And then eventually, probably about 6 years ago, I got to this point of questioning the entire system that I had created for myself, the entire program of, do I have to be the first in the office and the last to leave to be successful? What is successful anyway? And that's actually when I realized that I could channel. I didn't know that I could do that before, but I felt like I was looking out to this world and looking for answers on abundance, on money mindset, all of those things. And it's very vague out there, like be happy, but how happy? Like, how happy do I need to be? And I would actually, and I'm excited about talking about this in a few weeks, but I would actually convince myself that if I wasn't happy, if I wasn't perfect, like a doll, one of those blinking dolls all the time, that I would manifest bad things. I had this lower level of consciousness when it came to attraction. Like I had to be perfect all the time in terms of happy, or else I will attract bad things. And I started running that narrative. And then I even started to question that. And when I went within instead of looking outside for the answers, that's when things began to drop in. My channel started talking to me and giving me questions that completely crumbled the foundation that I had built in terms of my mindset, how things had to work, and allowed me to start playing with it and being more creative and how do I want it to work instead? And that big question of what is it that I actually want? And what is it that makes me happy? And the answers to those questions are forever changing because I am changing as I lean into the things that I desire, but they blew my mind and they continue to blow my mind because what I perceived it wasn't.
Oof. I mean, I think for me, when I've been going through over the last few years, especially with 2020, 2020 was such a hard year for so many people. And there were a lot of entrepreneurs that, they had to shift and they had to pivot and some of them lost everything. They lost their entire
Yourself included?
business, myself included. Exactly. And, when you look at that and you're going through something like that, it's really easy to get caught up in the, what am I going to do now? Everything that I have built over the last decade, over the last 2 decades, over the last 3 decades was literally just upended by my government. And you feel helpless. And that was one of the things that really helped me move through, and the grief of losing all of that was knowing that, there are other ways for things to work out. There are other ways for you to achieve the things that you want to achieve. And, when we moved to Texas, it's funny, we call ourselves California refugees. But when we moved to Texas, everything just aligned perfectly for us, and it was because we were open to receiving. And I think that is a really key component here in when you are experiencing abundance, is you have to be open to receive it. We had nowhere else to go. So we had no other way to be, but to be open to receiving. We happened to, I had a former client and friend who lived out here, and she said, why don't you come out and stay with us for a week? You can stay at our house. We have a great big house. It'll be really comfortable. We'll drive you everywhere you need to go. No need to rent a car. Just get an airline ticket and come out here. So we dropped, all of her off at, my in-laws and jumped on a plane and came over. And 5 days later, we left in escrow. The resources arrived, the way that they needed to, so that we could buy a house. The perfect house showed up for us. They gave us the exact amount of space that we need at this time in our life, and it wasn't even an on-market house. So we didn't have to compete with anybody to buy it. And that was one of the most crazy housing markets I think the world has ever seen. You had houses that were going for, hundreds of thousands of dollars more than they would normally go for. And people were bidding above and beyond the asking price by tens of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
And we waltzed in on an airplane, staying at a friend's house with no money. We got a pocket listing that just happened to come out of probate, that the buyers or the sellers were just willing to sell it to us. We gave them a fair price. Could they have made more money on this house? Absolutely. But they didn't. They sold it to us because we were open to receiving, because we had no other options. And sometimes it takes that pain of not having any other options to be open to receiving. So how do we get to a place of being open to receiving, or like seeing what's blocking us from receiving, so that we don't have to get to that pain point? Is there like a tip? Like what's the secret?
What's the secret? Well, I think that you touched on it a little bit. Often when we want something so bad, I'm going to speak energetically and I'm going to speak in terms of the mind, because that's what I do. I speak to both things. So in the mind, what we have conditioned is that it has to look like this. So for me to get a home, I'm going to have to be competing. We'll never find anything in our budget. It's going to be impossible to do. So you have all of these things going on inside your head. When it comes to making income, this one's really easy to speak to because people will be like, okay, well, I have, a coaching business or whatever. So I need to get one client. So that means, my brokerage business, we used to have like numbers for that. You'd book 25 appointments and X number of people would show up and like all of these metrics, if you will. So you need to make 10 calls a day. And if you don't make 10 calls a day, then you're not going to get those appointments. These are all belief systems that you're buying into that are stopping you from receiving. So the first question you can begin to ask is, what do I perceive that is stopping me from receiving? And I'll repeat that. What do I perceive that is stopping me from receiving? And it might be maybe stopping me from receiving. It might not be that it is actually stopping you from receiving, but this is something that we don't do as a society often enough, is check ourselves. What am I thinking? Where are those belief systems coming from? Is that absolute truth? Is it absolutely true that, to get a new client or to book a new appointment, you have to make 10 phone calls? No, it's not an absolute. Is it absolutely true that you're going to have more money to buy the house that you desire at this time because everything is getting bid up so high, you need that extra money to compete? No, it's not an absolute. But until you actually sit down with yourself and take a breath and allow those thoughts to come up. What am I thinking around this situation? What do I believe? What is like the modus operandi that I'm running underneath all of this to get to said place? Put it all down on the paper and start to look at it from this perspective of a step back. Of it's not personal, it's not right or wrong, whatever the belief system is or program that is running, it just is. And the next question you can ask yourself is this supporting me in the direction that I want to go? And if it's not, you have the choice of taking it out. What other belief can I replace with it? What is going to turn me in the direction? Abraham Hicks talks about that. You can't stop a speeding train, but you can slowly start backing it the other direction. So how can I start looking in this direction? And just simply looking at your belief systems on a piece of paper will open you up to seeing that another possibility exists. Now, talking on the energy side of things, when you're so hyper-focused on this is the only way I can achieve this, you're locking yourself into that box. So I got to make the 10 calls or I got to have more money. Well, if you're not in a position of you don't have those 10 new people to call, or you don't have that extra money available, then you're counting yourself out and you're anchoring into the frequency of lack. Well, I can't do it. It's not possible. It's never going to happen for me. So energetically, you're anchoring into all of these lower density frequencies that is pulling you down. And whether you're speaking to them or not, they're still running in the background. So you need to understand what you're thinking and what you're feeling about the situation from a place of no judgment, just to see it. There's no judgment here. It doesn't matter what it is. Once you get it on the paper, then you can deal with it. But until you actually look at it yourself, you will continue to put yourself into that box, which blocks all of the other possibilities that exist.
I think that exercise of, writing it down is a big thing. I know that sometimes we talk about things like journaling and meditation and stuff like that. But I think that when you really sit down, you write it down and you look at it, it allows you quite a bit of clarity around, what your mind and your belief systems are around it. When we were looking to buy a home, we had already made the decision that we were going to consider moving out of California before we found out that the place that we lived in was being sold. So we were already looking, and we were starting to feel like we were never going to get to buy anything ever. And it was very defeating, and I wished at that time that we probably should have gone through those types of exercises. But, my husband, he's a creator, so he can just create stuff out of nothing. So, I think that part of it was, he was even kind of feeling like, gosh, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to pull this off. And, and we did.
Well, and I think getting out of your normal zone really attributed to that as well, because it was like, okay, well, Colorado, because that's where you were first looking, it doesn't seem to really be working out. Like, let's just take a step back, a pause for the cause, as my dad would say, and just and look at, maybe there's another place that we could go. And then all of a sudden Texas popped up, and it was like, okay, maybe not really sold, but you went with it anyway. Okay, well, let's just go. And then you were out of your element and able to kind of leave some of those old frequencies and old belief systems behind, because you didn't really know anything about the Texas market. So you were able to have more possibilities flood in because you hadn't had that laser focus like you did in that other state of like, this is my experience. And we get so stuck in what is, and really it's what we perceive is to be true. And it's harder when you're in that box to perceive something else until you start looking at all of those things. So even just getting out of your own head, getting out of your own space and going somewhere else, it could be your backyard. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to a different state to get a new perspective. It could be you go to your backyard, or you go to a park that you've never been to, or you drive somewhere that you've never been, because you don't have any assumptions or perceptions or perceived realities about said thing. So your brain and your body isn't so focused on what you perceive is. So it gives you an opportunity to see something else.
Amazing. If you guys are liking this conversation, please hit the like button. It does help us. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. So, Jody, if somebody wants to work with you, what makes you different from all of these manifestation coaches that are out there? Because boy, there are a lot of them.
There is. And typically, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure they all do amazing jobs and everything. Kudos to everybody who has, mission on this planet. And what I see from manifestation coaches is they're helping you get to one thing, more money or whatever. And what I realized for myself and what I now teach is that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So how you are perceiving certain things about money, you will have these same perceptions in other areas of your life. The easiest one to speak to is time. I don't have enough time. Well, I don't have enough time to work, do more appointments, to get more clients, to whatever. That's the program that's running in the background. But I also don't have enough time to be with my family and spend time doing the things that I like to do. And we beat ourselves up because, we should be working instead of enjoying our life. So there's all of these programs running, and 99.9999999% of the time, it has nothing to do with money. Nothing to do with money. The reason why you're not receiving more money has nothing to do with money. It's a belief that was set at some point in your life, or a program that is running, possibly inherited, that is stopping you from seeing that it's easy to receive, that you are worthy of receiving, that it doesn't have to be like the box you've built and put yourself into or change yourself into. It can be a different possibility exists. So what I do that is different is I look at the whole picture, and it's focused on money when we begin. But what comes up, the questions that I ask people are all completely channeled, and they're designed to get a response throughout your entire body, so that anything that is stuck, whether it has something directly to do with money, or it's just impacting money, but it's connected to the way you see yourself, or your parents or whatever, all of that stuff is going to be upended, come up to the surface so you can let it go. We're really resetting your frequency back to its original, which is abundance, which is bliss, which is love. All these teachers that I see, or a lot of teachers that I see, are like, how to achieve the abundance frequency. You are it. We just need to take the garbage out that is stopping you from seeing that is your natural frequency. Your natural, like, you look at the world that we live in today, it is naturally abundant. And the more that you love it and you nurture it, the more abundant it becomes. We're no different. We're naturally abundant. And now we have to nurture that brain body experience that is happening. So one of my gifts is when somebody speaks, I see their abundance blocks light up. So when you're talking, I can pinpoint what is blocking you because I can feel it within my own system and I can see it. That's how my channel works for me. So I've designed all of my programs to teach you how to do that for yourself so that you don't actually need me, and that you can fluidly have this conversation, unpack all of this stuff, and you have the tools to continue to create for the rest of your life.
That's amazing. And, as someone who has been on the receiving end of your gifts, it's really profound how quickly and easily you just drop right into it. And you're like, are you ready for a reframe?
Right.
Like,
and
I don't know. I want to be mad for a while.
yeah. And that's, there's lots of tips that I give in my courses, and that's exactly one of them. Sometimes, and I think it's important to speak to this, sometimes we're not ready to let go. We're not ready to let go of that grief or that pain or, being miserable, if you will. It's serving us. Everything that we do serves us, whether it is when we take a step back, a positive way of getting what we need or a negative way, it's serving something. There's a reason why you're doing it. And we're so judgmental with ourselves about this. Oh, I shouldn't be doing that. And we utilize personal development as a beating stick, or that's what I did, at least when I first began. You know better, whack. You should have done better, whack. You're seeing all of this, you've created this reality of shit, whack. And we beat ourselves up over it rather than embracing it. Okay, that's the past and I can't change it. I can't do anything about what I did yesterday. I can only move forward with a new awareness of why I'm doing it, a new compassion for myself. And a part of that is when you're in a state of, I want to be mad, I want to believe I was wronged. A lot of our society, most of it, does not give themselves the ability to do that, does not give themselves permission. You're not allowed to feel bad because then you're going to attract bad things to you. Okay, no. All that you're doing with that is you are stuffing it all down for another day, my friend. You got to let it out. You got to allow yourself to feel. We were given this range of emotions for a reason. So feel them. It doesn't mean that you're going to feel enraged forever. Actually, I promise you it's the opposite. When you allow yourself, when you give yourself that space to feel whatever it is that you feel right in this moment, feeling it will allow it to move through you at lightning speed. And then you can move on. But we are like 2-year-olds having a tantrum. Think about it like a cartoon Jody. Her hair is all up and probably on fire, just screaming, ah, and running with flames in the air. I'm giving you a good visual. Okay. This is how we operate, is mostly like a 2-year-old. And then what we try and do and what other, personal development or coaches speak to is shift out of this space. Well, Heather, let me ask you this. And audience, everybody that's listening, have you ever tried to reason with a 2-year-old who is having a tantrum?
Yeah, no.
No, you can't. There is no logic. There is no reason because they are in an emotional state. So you have to deal with the emotional state, and we have to have that compassion for ourselves, because it's at some point, when you were little, perhaps you had a mother that was nurturing and loving. And, I know that's not the experience for everyone, but you had somebody to kiss your boo-boos and tell you it's going to be okay and hug you when you cried. And then at some point in life that stopped and you were expected to do it yourself, but nobody ever taught you how. So now at 30 something years old, I had to learn how to do that for myself, how to soothe myself, how to allow myself and give myself permission to feel those things for as long as I needed to feel them. And the more I allowed myself to do it, the faster the feelings would process and leave. And then I could reason with myself. And I actually teach this method in my More course. It's called CAST. So it's a way to teach your brain to see that you're going into an emotional response where you won't be able to reason with yourself, how to identify that, how to have your body as your like radar detector, if you will, and then how to transmute that experience so that you can choose on the other side from a space that is more expansive and more in alignment with getting you faster to what it is you truly desire.
Amazing. I just love your course. I think that everybody should take it, and we'll have a link in the description below if you're interested in signing up for that. I think you have some other things other programs and things. We'll link all those out there for everybody so that whatever suits their fancy, they can just jump into.
Absolutely. And I have a like free training on, the process of more. I call it the fluid money blueprint, how I walk you through the steps. Some of the things that, typically trip up entrepreneurs when it comes to attracting more money. And I'm really excited this summer. I am in the works of putting together a couple of in-person events in nature. I'm looking at doing a one-day event, possibly a summit, and a weekend-long event to really unplug and ground into the abundance that is you, that is all around you. And the secret really to having more abundance in your life is realizing you have more abundance in your life than you think, and seeing that and reveling in that every day. It allows you to see how much more is out there and available to you, and open up your brain to different ways that it could come in. Just like you said, you went on a plane to Texas and then all of a sudden, boom, and that happened. I mean, there was a couple of years ago, we needed a tractor for the farm, and, it showed up out of nowhere, literally showed up out of nowhere. It wasn't exactly the tractor that we needed, but really broke the barriers that I had in my mind at that time of how things can show up for you and through you exactly when you need them. And that is another layer of abundance that I would love to have a conversation about. I know that we're running out of time in this conversation, but our society is geared towards scarcity. I don't have enough. I'm not going to have enough. I'm never going to have enough. And it could be time, money, resources, all of the things. That is the program that we're looped into with the age that we were in, Piscean age, right?
Right.
And we're shifting to this Aquarian age of flow and creation and beauty and being really taken care of. And the reality is that always existed. You are always taken care of. The universe is always delivering. It's always got your back. But our brain gets in the way and leads us astray, if you will. And we get into these programs of running scarcity and limit and lack. And we get so entrenched in that we forget that the universe is designed to support us. And it is doing exactly that when we allow it to.
It's interesting about the brain and how it's, it gets programmed to scarcity based on, its environment. And the thing about the brain is the brain doesn't know the difference between fact and fiction. It doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know if what it's experiencing is real or not. And so, when you are thinking about lack and scarcity and all of that, it's going to create that like feeling more and more and more so, and I think that that's where, when a lot of manifestation teachings and coaches, they always talk about, think it in your mind, and attach it to the feeling that you're having, like you already had it. And it's because your brain needs that in order to program itself to, oh, I have this. So it's not this lofty goal anymore.
Yeah, I already have it. It's already done. A really good example of this that shifted my perspective is I used to have that scarcity track on autoplay, like, oh my God, I'm not going to have enough. Oh my God, what if I don't have enough? What if I don't have enough? Just like this buzzing of insecurity, of unsafe, of opposite of peace, like so destructive and so scared, fear. It was just fear. And when I first started to realize it, it was when I got a paycheck. So the way that my brokerage system works is we get a notification. It used to be back then the day before we got paid. So it would tell you what your paycheck is going to be, because we get paid twice a week on commission with the brokerage. And what I would notice is I would be in that space of like, what am I going to do? And then all of a sudden the picture would pop up saying that I made $1,000, $5,000, whatever it was, $10,000. And all of a sudden my system would calm. And what I realized in that moment is that in that very precise moment, absolutely nothing changed. There was still the exact same amount in my bank account as there was before I saw that picture in that moment, but I felt better. And that was a huge awakening for me, that the feeling is not coming from the things outside of us, it's coming from within and our perception of how we're viewing the world. So if I could change or alter that perception, I could change the way that I was feeling, and I could change my power to create more of the things that I actually desired.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Jody, what are we talking about next week? Because this conversation is going to continue.
This conversation is going to continue. We're actually going to talk about the lower perspective, or the lower conscious perspective of law of attraction, and how it has been distorted to be the whacking stick of it's all your fault. We're going to shift that perspective for you to one that is more embracing compassion and opening you up to see more of the possibilities, and really a higher level of the law, a higher consciousness level of the law of attraction. So,
whoa. Okay.
Woo!
Well, everybody, make sure you're subscribed, because you're not going to want to miss that.
Yeah, amazing. This is such a beautiful conversation.
Any last wisdom before we go?
Yes. Directly from the Abundance Consciousness Council, you were put on this earth to experience the most beautiful, heavenly things that your mind cannot even imagine. Simply allow it, and it will be.
Yeah. See you next week.
Bye.